This was a fucked up and weird suspenseful horror movie that was also surprisingly funny as well. But a lot of people were saying how this was like one of, if not the best horror movie of the year. Yeah, I don't know about that because this was one of the movies for me where after exiting the theater, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if I loved it or hated it. But I think I'm leaning more towards the former. So Barbarian shows the journey of Tess, a young woman who discovers a rental home she booked was already occupied by a stranger. Stranded, alone, and with no other option, she decides to stay the night, but soon discovers more than she had bargained for. Coming into this, I thought it was just a mystery horror that was going to be semi-predictable, and after having watched the trailer, I thought I had a good idea as to like what this movie was going to be about. But how wrong I was. Barbarian is a mystery horror with a bunch of twists and turns, and that's one thing I love about it. It's best to go into this movie with no expectations whatsoever because it was suspenseful as hell seeing the main protagonist discover that the house she was staying in was hiding something far more sinister than an unexpected guest. And the cinematography and sounds, especially early on, were incredibly nerve-wracking and unnerving, like just not knowing exactly what was going to happen, but on the other hand, still anticipating that something was just going to jump right out at you and that something really fucked up might be happening where we aren't exactly able to see it. And that's the thing, rather than being terrifying in the physical sense, even though we do get a bit of that, here it's much more psychological. And that's where I kind of have mixed feelings about. I would be lying if I said I didn't feel like this movie could have been done better because this was ultimately one of those movies that just felt kind of underwhelming after exiting the theater. And I guess a big part of that could be due to like coming into this movie with the expectation that it was going to be good because I did see the rating beforehand and what a lot of people were saying about this movie, and so I guess it came in with high hopes. You know, one thing that I hate is how this movie technically already came out like a little bit over a month ago, I believe. However, it actually only releases in Australia next week on October the 20th with Black Adam. Sucks how that's the case, but luckily, I was able to watch it like 2 nights ago in the first ever preview screenings here in my country with a packed house. And honestly, even though I say it was a bit underwhelming, seeing it with a full crowd made the experience even better. Because this is definitely the type of movie for it. Trust me, you're going to want to see this movie with a lot of people. The amount of holy shit reactions I heard and just shock and bewilderment from the audience and laughs as well made for a great night. And yeah, one thing that I really did not expect was how hilarious this movie is, especially with Justin Long's character. It almost doesn't make sense in a way, like how a movie that started off so suspenseful and eerie just develops into almost a horror comedy. There were a few times in this movie where it just feels like you paid to see a different type of movie, like right at the start and towards the middle, mostly after something majorly horrifying happens. Which I honestly didn't mind because it made us feel uneasy, on edge, and highly anticipating what was going to come next. But at first, it just felt kind of weird because I was like, why am I watching this? You know, what does it have to do with the movie as a whole? But afterwards, I realized that those were pretty cool character development moments, and I actually felt more for the characters that got that much more screen time. I guess it just made me like the characters even more, and just hoped for their success. But coming back to the psychological horror aspect, this movie is not really clear-cut. It really makes you think and leaves much to the imagination because a lot of what Barbarian is about isn't actually shown on screen. I honestly had to search up like after the movie Barbarian explained like online just to fully understand what it all meant because there are a lot of themes in this movie and I still had a lot of questions even after the movie ended, and I still kind of do. Now don't get me wrong, I did understand what this movie was ultimately all about. I just felt like I needed more. Man, I so desperately want to make a spoiler review for this movie because it just feels like I can't talk about what I mean without talking spoilers, and I don't really want to give out anything to those of you who haven't watched the movie. I am considering it. I mean, if this video gets 100 likes, nah, I'm just kidding. But like, for real though, I might make one. But if I get like one comment of any of you guys who are like, oh, you should do it, then I will definitely do it. So yeah, because I'm not gonna make it if no one's gonna watch it. You know what I mean? But without spoiling it, it just feels like the movie could have been longer to add in more scares and plot. Not jump scares though, which there were a few cheap ones here and there, and some classic horror cliches which just made me roll my eyes. There weren't too many of those, thankfully, but I'm talking about the creepy scares. Because in the early stages of this movie, like almost all mystery horrors, the movie kept hinting that something wasn't right. Some of those hints were bullshit though, which was like what I was saying with the classic horror movie cliches, or the things that just don't really make too much sense, like a door just randomly closing and locking someone out of a room. But I just wish we got like more hints that made more sense early on. Like for example, making more use of the outside area at night. How long was this movie? Like around an hour and 40 minutes or something around that? Yeah. I feel like they could have definitely dragged the movie out a little bit longer, because I feel like they were a little bit lazy with some sequences. And hey, if they did, then I probably wouldn't have as many questions as I do now. But maybe that's a thing with this psychological mystery horror. Maybe some people like not knowing the exact details, but trying to piece together in their heads why the things in this movie were what they were. I don't know though, for me, I just wanted more. Like I said, a lot of what Barbarian is about is off camera, so when they had the time to explain it in the movie, it just felt a little bit rushed. It felt a little bit too rushed. It could have been longer to either make it more scarier, or like add in more creepy hints early on, like I was saying, or increase the amount of time they spent in the underground portion, and maybe just ultimately elaborate on the mystery of this movie a little bit more. With all this being said though, I still thought it was a really decent watch, especially since it's one of those that really makes you think and gets people talking. I also loved how surprisingly emotional the ending was. Almost brought a tear to my eye and made me rethink the entire movie. Because of that, I'm going to give Barbarian a B+. That's why I titled it A Whirlwind of Twists and Emotions, because a lot of this movie was pretty unpredictable, and I felt a whole range of just mixed emotions during the movie, ranging from fear, suspense, horror, and disgust to humor, and even sadness in a way. But man, I always find myself rating most movies between like a B or the B+ range, mostly since most of the movies I watch are decent, but they might not be the best. But I will say though, like between all of these movies, there are those that, even though I rate them like pretty much the same, are more memorable than others. This movie being one of them. Also, RIP Robbie Coltrane. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Like and sub if you enjoyed. And as always, feel free to check out any of my previous videos. Until next time.